so many people compare to other people. Like, so many people may listen to this and be like, oh, I can never be that Navy SEAL. And you're right. You will never be me. Just like I'm never going to be Joe De Sena. You need to figure out how to be the elite version of you. And that starts and stops with you.
Spartans, listen up.
We need to sleep better. So how do you sleep better? Never thought about it before. And so I met Jack, I met Essentia. Pay attention to the mattress you sleep on because it's loaded with chemicals.
Recovery, cooling, and pressure relief, all in one mattress. Up to 60% more deep and REM sleep. Less inflammation, faster bounce back. No toxins, no EMFs, no BS.
My buddy Jack over at Essentia, he's kind enough to give us a code for the Spartan community. That's DECA, that's Tough Mudder, all of us. Use Spartan25, get a discount. Prioritize your sleep so you can sleep faster, you can do more burpees, you can train more, you can get healthier. When you sleep well, you live well.
Joe De Sena, CEO, founder of Spartan, host of the Hard Way podcast. I've got a great buddy of mine here, Jason Redman, retired Navy SEAL, 21 years in the service, absolute badass animal. You remind me a little bit of Wolverine, by the way.
Yeah, with the amazing hair. I'm not quite as indestructible as him. I did pretty well, but my regeneration isn't quite as good.
So you make it through, and then 21 years of service?
Yeah, made it through 21 years. It was a great career, an amazing career. I was an enlisted SEAL and did counter drug stuff in Central and South America. I became a training instructor for the SEAL team, not out in San Diego for our basic SEAL training. So I learned I like teaching. I learned, I taught marksmanship and evasion and recovery and communications. And through that, then I was recommended and selected for a commission. So I went to school at Old Dominion University, part of the ROTC, earned my degree and got a commission and came back to the SEAL teams as an officer. But 9/11 had happened. The world had changed. I had done very well up to that point in my career, which sometimes when you do really well at a young age, especially young men, we can get arrogant. And I did. I thought I was like God's gift to leadership. I was like, hey, look at me. I'm top dog and everything I'm doing. Like, I'm going to be, the General Patton of the SEAL teams or something. But 9/11 happened while I was at school. And so when I came back, and we probably had the biggest rewrite of tactics that occurred from 9/11, the actual date, and when we started conducting operations in Afghanistan and then in Iraq a couple of years later. So by the time I came back in 2004, a lot of the tactics I had grown up on thinking I'm like super smart and experienced had all changed. And instead of humbling myself and being like, hey man, I don't know how to do these things, this is a failure in leadership I often see. Leaders sometimes feel like they have to have all the answers, and it's weakness if I say I don't know how to do something. And I bought into all that bullshit along with arrogance, and then stumbling and stepping on my toes led me to make poor decisions, drinking, and all of that culminated with the bad call on a mission in Afghanistan, which almost got me kicked out. So, so here I am, I'm on this amazing trajectory. I get commissioned and then make the, first combat deployment and then make this bad call. And it wasn't just the bad call. It was the series of poor decision-making and the way I had led that led up to that. But I'll be honest, it was probably one of the best things that ever could have happened to me. Thankfully, I had leadership that believed in me. I got sent to U.S. Army Ranger School as part of my punishment. And it was there that I really hit rock bottom. I almost got kicked out. I almost quit. Well, I did quit. I quit Ranger School for a minute. A moment of mental weakness and ego and everything kind of culminated in this perfect storm. But thankfully, the Ranger Colonel, KK Chen, great guy, basically was like, you're making a mistake. Like, don't throw your career away. And it wasn't so simple as like, okay, hey, you're right. Will you put me back in my class? It was like, no. He's like, you get to go sit in Ranger School jail for a month, and then I'll put you in the next class. And I'll be honest, it was in that month that probably was one of the best things I could do. It super humbled me and made me realize, like, man, all the problems, everything from the mistake on that mission to how you poorly led yourself, how the drinking issues when you were out, none of these things set the example as a leader. You were following the old adage of, hey, do as I say, not as I do, which obviously is the worst form of leadership there is and really doesn't fly in a combat unit. And I'll tell people it doesn't fly anywhere. You want to be a great parent, don't ever say that to your kids, man. You need to set the example and they'll follow it. But anyways, that became like the foundation for me. That month, I spent a lot of time reading leadership books, evaluating the good leaders I had watched and also the bad leaders, recognizing, hey, man, you put yourself here, So that kind of started this reset in my career.
How many years in were you when you were in that Ranger jail?
13 years.
How many years in? You were in 13, and so you went another 8.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got lucky that you got caught with a safety net because right? Like most probably wouldn't have this outcome.
No, I'm super fortunate. I'm still friends to the day with our commanding officer in SEAL Team 10. And I often tell people, one of my tenets of leadership that I speak to is respect. Number one, if you're a leader, you got to respect the position you hold as a leader. If you're a parent, guess what? You're a leader, and you better respect that your kids are watching everything you do. The good, the bad, and the ugly they're learning from. And your kids are going to duplicate, no different than your staff or employees or team members. They're going to duplicate what you're doing if you're the leader. So you can say whatever you want, they're going to duplicate what you're actually doing. And the other part of that is respect for the fact we lead people and people have problems. People get off course. People make mistakes. So don't be so hardline. You may be able to take someone who's good and by helping them grow, I was good or maybe even great, but I hadn't quite reached my elite status yet. And that commanding officer gave me a second chance and helped me grow up and become a much better version of myself. So, I often tell people in my talks, this was during the Operation Red Wings deployment. So that's the lone survivor story. So my boss, that's the Marcus Luttrell story is what that is. So my boss and several of my teammates were killed when our helicopter was shot down, and my commanding officer, none of us got to go home when that occurred. So my commanding officer carried the massive burden of being in charge when all that happened and to lose all those guys. And fast forward several months and I made this bad call. The easiest thing for him to have done would be like, get rid of this guy. I don't have time to deal with this young knucklehead ensign making bad calls. But he didn't. He respected me as a young SEAL leader who had gotten off course. And he gave me opportunities to grow. It wasn't easy. They definitely held my feet to the fire to grow up. And they basically said, hey, if you mess up again, you're out of the Navy. You get one shot at this. So you're going to go to Ranger School. You're going to come back. You're going to do another platoon.
What was the magic? I know a bunch of Rangers. What was the magic with Ranger School? Like, why do you think they did that?
Ranger School, a lot of people don't know. Ranger School is a leadership school. And for people to understand, when someone says they're a U.S. Army Ranger, that means they were assigned to a Ranger regiment in the United States Army. So the vast majority of those guys, all of those guys ultimately go through Ranger School that are part of a Ranger regiment. But it doesn't necessarily mean I went to Ranger School. You'll never hear me say I was an Army Ranger. I'm Ranger qualified, meaning I went through Ranger School and I earned the tab. That's why the Army places such a high premium on Ranger School. All the Army infantry basic officers go through Ranger School. The Army wants all their young leaders at some point to go through Ranger School because it's a leadership school through hardship. BUDS is definitely more physically hard. Ranger School forces you to lead and do it through a series of adversity they place on you. Everything from a lack of food to a lack of sleep to challenging problems, and you move through leadership positions. So no one wears rank in leadership in Ranger School, but you're assigned different leadership tasks. And sometimes you're just a NUG, you're just a rifleman. And sometimes you're the company commander running the whole thing, and you're graded on all these things, how you function, both when you're a rifleman and both when you're in a graded leadership position. So it really forces you to be a good team player, to understand how we're getting things done. You conduct full mission profiles all through Ranger School. It's kind of how it works. Woodland phase, so land operations, and then mountain phase, and then down in Florida, you're doing kind of maritime swamp phase, and you're conducting all these operations. So
when did you finally, why'd you retire? You hit your number, you hit your 20 years and you had enough?
Everything was tracking. I got myself back on course. We had probably one of the most impactful deployments of my career, and for many SEALs I know, probably of a career, a lifetime. We would end up. I was in Iraq the spring of 07 until the fall of 07. That cycle in 06, 07 in Iraq was really a super volatile time, a very action-packed time. Probably the majority of our casualties came during that time frame. This was, for those that remember, this was a time where we were talking about the surge. We were surging more troops into Iraq because Iraq was just kind of imploding. You had a civil war that was occurring between Al-Qaeda was Sunni-based. Iran had heavy Iranian influence. So all of that created this perfect storm of combat. And for us, it was like, man, it was happy hunting. We conducted over 80 direct action missions, so what we call capture kill missions, where we were specifically going after either mid-level or high-level Al-Qaeda and insurgent leaders. And it was this incredible deployment. And it was probably one of the best troops I ever had the honor to work with. Just the best camaraderie, the best cohesion, the best balance of experience, best leadership. And we were 1 week from going home, and I had checked all the boxes. I had requested to screen for our next tier SEAL team. My team and I went after the number one leader for Al-Qaeda in the western province of Iraq, and we walked into a very well-executed ambush. And myself and two other teammates were all shot up in that gunfight. I was shot 8 times between my body armor and body, took 2 rounds in the left elbow, and took a round to the face, which obviously did a lot of damage. Barely survived. I owe my life to both my teammates and the Air Force AC-130 gunship, which is a air-to-ground close air support platform, and it would be the closest fire mission ever executed in the entire Iraq War. We literally called rounds directly on our position that night, but survived. But that started a whole new journey. They originally, medevaced off the battlefield, barely survived. Doctor said it's a miracle I survived from the amount of blood I lost. End up, I went from Baghdad to Balad, Iraq, to Landstuhl, Germany, to Bethesda Naval Hospital, and facing a whole lot of reconstruction, and initially pretty dire prognosis. They originally wanted to amputate my arm. I had no use of my left hand. My elbow was totally destroyed. Doctor said the best outcome was to take my arm off. Definitely a God moment, because the whole orthopedic team's consensus was to amputate my arm above the elbow. But the head of orthopedics at Bethesda just happened to be a former SEAL. He went against his team and said, I'm going to save his arm. And he did. And I mean, I don't have full function, but I've gone on now to, I deadlifted over 400 pounds in 2019 when I was told I'd never be able to lift more than 50 pounds with my bad arm. Every year I've done the SEAL swim, cranking out, 66 pull-ups and 3.5-mile swim and 300 push-ups. So, they're not pretty anymore, but I do them because, I'm still here and I still have an arm. So anyways, it became a 4-year journey of being put back together, and I wanted to stay operational, but they were never able to fix my arm to where I can't bend any further than this. So that becomes a real issue for grabbing gear anywhere on the left side of my body. So I kind of reached, the SEAL teams are great. They took care of me and they said, hey, if you want to stay, we'll keep you. And I did. For a while, I stayed. I worked ops, I worked special projects, I worked training. I got to do some cool things, but I came up against a reality check. I mean, I'm now at 18 years in the Navy, 18 to 19 years at this point. I knew I was never going to be able to be operational again. And the SEAL teams don't have a staff officer path. We only have an operational path for SEAL officers. So what was going to happen is I was up for lieutenant commander, but I would have never been able to make commander because I wasn't able to check the operational boxes in order to make that next rank. So I kind of was like, maybe it's time to start looking at the civilian world. So that kind of led me down the path. I mean, it would take 2 years to medically retire me, and that carried me to 21 years. But yeah, before I got out of the Navy in 2013.
You just keep getting people to help you through your whole life, whether they're sending you to Ranger School. There's been 3 or 4 things I've heard in the story where if you didn't have those moments, the doctor, you have different outcomes. So is it the hair? Is it the way you communicate? What is it that keeps getting you these awesome people that help?
I mean, I think God presents opportunities in your life if people believe in that. I do. I mean, there have been many God moments that have come along that have saved me from myself. But I will say this, I often talk about the overcome mindset. And the overcome mindset goes hand in hand with another principle I talk about, getting off the X. Getting off the X is this idea I survived this vicious enemy ambush, but everybody gets ambushed in life. Everybody, you might not be able to relate to the bullets and bombs of battle, but you can relate to the bullets and bombs of life, rejection, failure, you name it. As humans, we all have gone through it. And when those moments come, it's like being on the X. And we call the X in special operations the point of attack. It's the ambush point. It's the suicide bombing, it's a sniper attack, it's where the gunfight initially initiates. And so many people in life, whether it's a life ambush or a real ambush, everyone has a tendency to get pinned down in those first couple of moments because it's overwhelming. You're being shot at, the world is blowing up, whether it's in life or whether it's in battle. And learning to get off the X and drive forward is the most critical part. And opportunities will come along, but what I tell people is, you can have an entire army drag you off the X, but if you're not willing to get off it on your own, you'll just crawl back onto it. So yes, I had all these amazing opportunities. My commanding officer who gave me an opportunity, the Ranger Colonel, the doctor.
The teammate on the steel dock, right?
That's right. But the greatest gift you have in this life is a choice. So many other people would have been presented these opportunities and they might have chosen the other way, Oh, doc, no, my arm's, because the prognosis wasn't good for my arm. There were risks that came with this. And that's the hard thing with really heavy injuries. They're like, hey, we can do this or we can do this, but here's the risk and reward.
And it's risk for him. It's risk for the doc. I'm thinking to myself when the whole, orthopedic department said cut it off, risk for them, work for them. They don't believe they could do it, right? Like it's easier. Just cut it off.
That's right. It was the easy solution. And it was a very hard, and this was another great tribute to this doctor. I'm still friends with him to this day. I think the highest level of medicine is the willingness to accept it's beyond your ability. And there are a lot of doctors' egos who won't allow that. And I encountered quite a few of those doctors on my journey. But Dan Valeg, big shout out to you, Dan. Dan reached a point where he said, your arm is beyond what I have the ability to do. I want to refer you to a doctor I learned from out of Johns Hopkins. And that gave me, before that happened, I had no use. My arm was just fused in place. Andy Egelsetter was that doctor who gave me some additional movement. I probably had one of the best facial reconstruction surgeons, not one of the best. Literally, he is regarded as the best in the world. He wasn't then, he was an up and comer, but now the best. So, I am very blessed. I've had some amazing opportunities, but I also took those opportunities. I chose when people called me out and said, hey, you're screwed up. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it took me a while for it to set in and recognize it and be like, oh, I'm the knucklehead. But I think that's the secret in this life. I talk about the overcome mindsets comprised of three things. Number one is awareness. So, hey, bad things can happen. Awareness that nothing ever is going to go according to plan. I don't care the perfect plan. I don't care. I always, and people will say, wow, for such a positive guy, you have a pretty dark outlook. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the reality of this life, man. Bad things happen to good people every single day in this country. Why do you think it'll never happen to you? People get life-threatening illnesses. People lose people. Jobs fold in a blink of an eye because something comes along. Like, I live my life like, hey, everything can be gone in a second. So I'm aware. That leads me, number two is preparation. And sometimes that's just mental preparation, just to mentally be prepared like, hey, at any moment, someone can punch you in the face or you can get shot in the face. Well, what are you going to do about it? You're going to lay there and cry? And in doing that, step number three is taking action in those moments, the ability to actually get off that X and drive forward. So I teach people that how to build an overcome mindset is built on those three things, with the biggest ones being awareness, preparation. If you do those two, it makes action a lot easier.
I love it. I mean, my final question would have been like, give us three things that people could apply to their lives. So you just nailed it. How do people find you?
If they go to jasonredman.com, all my information's on there. I was doing coaching. I was doing a lot of speaking. I'm scaling back right now. I'm kind of flexing my entrepreneur muscles. It's kind of the final phase of my elite performance. I've had amazing success in many areas. You know, New York Times best-selling author, all these great things, beautiful family. My kids are great. So the last frontier for me is entrepreneurship and a level of financial freedom. So I'm kind of navigating that path. I'm a new founding member of a tech company that's doing some pretty amazing things. We're revolutionizing how we take care of our service members and veterans, how we administer those benefits. So I'm on that journey right now. So yeah, if you go to my website and you're looking for coaching, I'm not coaching right now. You know, so many people compare to other people. Like, so many people may listen to this and be like, oh, you know, look at that guy. I could never be that guy. I could never be that Navy SEAL. But and you're right. You will never be me. Just like I'm never going to be Joe De Sena. I'm never going to be Marcus Luttrell. I'm never going to be, you know, Michael Jordan. And you shouldn't try and be those people. You need to figure out how to be the elite version of you. And that starts and stops with you.
Your dad had no idea what level you were at when he kicked you out.
No. Or told me,